In this next section, we're going to review and discuss the formation of ions. Ions are atoms or groups of atoms that have become charged by either gaining or losing electrons. And the thing to remember here is that this behavior is fully a result of the gain or loss of electrons. It's those negative charges surrounding the nucleus that move around to form ions. Cations, which we have labeled here on the left-hand side, are positively charged and are formed by elements on the left side of the periodic table. Okay, so metals are the things that we expect to form cations, and they are formed by losing electrons. Okay. Anions on the right-hand side of the periodic table are negatively charged, and are formed by elements on the right side of the periodic table, the nonmetals. And so in order to become negatively charged, we have to get some extra negative charges, some extra electrons. So these anions are formed by gaining electrons. Okay? So some of the most common cations and anions in the main group elements are shown here. Always in group 1, we form a positive 1 ion. In group 2, or we also see sometimes the older naming of 2A here, we have all positive 2 ions. This beryllium doesn't have a charge because it actually forms covalent compounds, it doesn't form ions usually. So that's why it's not included. And then in group 3A or group 13 on your periodic table, aluminum is the element here that we expect to form a positive 3 ion. And then in group 15 or 5A, as it is here, nitrogen would form a 3- ion. If phosphorus below it was in a compound, it would also form a -3 ion. Oxygen, sulfur, and the other elements in group 16 or 6A form a ion with an overall -2 charge, and the halogens in group 7A or 17 will gain 1 electron to form a -1 charged ion. Let's talk about how cations are formed. So cations from group 1, or again in the older naming, group 1A with lithium, sodium, potassium, always have a charge of 1+, and the cations in group 2 or 2A always have a charge of 2+. So taking the example of magnesium in group 2, when it is electrically neutral, it has an equal number of protons and electrons. When it becomes that +2 or 2+ ion, that indicates 2 units of positive charge. So we have 2 more positives in that magnesium ion than negative. We do that by losing 2 electrons. So this 2 here indicates the 2 negative charges that were lost in forming the magnesium 2+ cation. Let's look at the other side of the periodic table and talk about the formation of anions. So we can see zoomed in here these major groups of anions, group 15 or 5A, 16 or 6A, and 17 or 7A. The anions here in group 15 always have a 3- charge. In 16 always have a 2- charge, and 17 always have a 1- charge. How are those negatively charged anions formed? By having more electrons than protons, so by gaining electrons. So if I look just at sulfur here, when it's a sulfur atom, it has equal numbers of protons and electrons. If we add 2 electrons to it, so if it gains those 2 electrons, then it will have 2 more electrons than protons and give it an overall 2- charge. So this 2- tells us that we have 2 more negatives than positives in this atom overall, making it the sulfur ion.